I hadn't planned on stopping. The drive from Flagstaff to Sedona wasn't long, just under 2 hours if traffic cooperated. It was one of those impulsive solo weekend getaways that I took every now and then, when the weight of spreadsheets, inboxes, and blinking Slack notifications became unbearable. I told myself the hikes and red rock views would fix the insomnia, or at least knock some of the static out of my head. The weather was perfect for late spring. Breezy, not too hot, the kind of air that smells clean and distant, like pine needles and distant ozone. I had a thermos of gas station coffee, my phone playlist on shuffle, and the winding road mostly to myself. I saw the sign around 3:17 p.m. A 2-lane road had just curved around a long shoulder when I spotted the post up ahead, maybe 40 yards from the main highway. The letters on it were faded white, almost gray, painted over dull green metal. Nothing fancy, just a name. Dalehurst, 3 miles, that was it. No highway number, no county route, no arrows, just a single metal sign sticking out of the ground like a forgotten gravestone. I slowed down instinctively, flicking my eyes to the GPS. No results. I zoomed out, checked for local towns. Nothing nearby named Dalehurst. No red dots, no Yelp reviews, no pins or road closures. Just forest and ridges and that little gray line on the map leading nowhere. Curiosity is a funny thing. It doesn't yell, it whispers. I had time. That was the stupid part. No schedule, no one waiting on me. My hotel wasn't expecting check-in until 6 o'clock. I could make a little detour. Just a few miles. The road to Dalehurst was narrower than I expected. More like a glorified driveway, cracked in places and swallowed by pine roots. The canopy closed overhead almost immediately, sunlight turning patchy, flickering through the branches like strobes. My car jolted a bit as I crossed what looked like an old cattle guard, rusted and half submerged in dirt. After 5 minutes, I started to feel it, the quiet. Not the good kind either. Not the meditative hush of the woods or the soft hum of nature. This was more like the air itself had been switched off. No wind, no birds, just the occasional crunch of gravel under my tires. I gripped the steering wheel tighter without realizing it. The trees here were dense. Denser than they should have been. Spruce and juniper packed together like they were hiding something behind them. Their trunks looked swollen, damp, the kind of rot that comes from too much moisture and not enough sun. A thin haze had settled low to the ground. Not quite fog, more like dust stirred up from deep underground. The road began to narrow again, winding now. My GPS had long since stopped updating. No signal. I glanced at the odometer. I'd gone about 2.5 miles, and that's when I saw it. A structure. No, not a building exactly. More like a gate. It arched over the road, made of dark wooden beams tied together with iron bands, half swallowed by creeping ivy. The letters above it were carved, not painted, each one deep and gouged with something blunt. Dalehurst. A chill slid down my back like water. Not fear. Not yet. Just the first static hint of something unnatural. Like walking into a room and realizing someone was there a second before they spoke. I stopped the car, engine idling. Rolled the window down. The air smelled. Wrong. Sweet but rancid, like flowers left too long in a vase. Somewhere, something wet dripped. I should have turned around right then, but I didn't, because in the distance, just past the gate, I thought I saw movement. Not clear, not human, just a flicker. A pale figure between trees. It was gone before I could focus. My hands were cold on the steering wheel. Still, I pressed forward. Just a little further. Just to see what was at the end of this road. The gate creaked overhead as I passed beneath it. Not from the wind. There wasn't any. The sound came from the wood itself, as if the beams remembered being trees and hated me for coming through. I kept driving. The road beyond the gate was less a road and more a scar. Broken pavement interrupted by roots, fallen branches, and the occasional mound of stone, as if something beneath had tried to punch through. I eased the car forward, tires crunching over the debris. The forest here felt compressed. Not dense in the way nature gets dense, but like the trees were being squeezed inward from every angle. Their bark was dark, almost charred in places, and some of the trunks looked split, as if struck by lightning. At 3.8 miles, the forest broke suddenly. The town, if you could call it that, appeared without transition. One moment I was swallowed by shadow, the next I was staring at a wide dirt clearing flanked by crooked buildings. No welcome sign, no population count, just a vague sense of arrival that made my stomach knot. The buildings were low and wooden, single-story mostly, with porches that sagged like they hadn't been stepped on in decades. Their windows were intact, but the glass had this smoky sheen, like it had been frosted over from the inside. A post office stood crookedly on one corner. A wooden church, with no cross on the steeple, sat just across from it, and a general store loomed in the center. Everything was still too still. I pulled over and turned off the car. No movement, no animals, no wind. No sounds except for the ticking of my engine as it cooled. I got out. My boots crunched on gravel. The texture of the air changed immediately. Thicker, almost sticky, as if walking into humidity that didn't belong to the weather. I took a few cautious steps toward the store. Its sign had once said, Dalehurst General, but half the letters had fallen, leaving behind rusted brackets and pale outlines. As I reached for the doorknob, I noticed it. The dust. It was on everything. Windowsills, handles, the porch steps, thick and undisturbed. No prints, no footprints, no drag marks from animals, not even my own. I stepped back and looked down. My boots were clean. I should have seen my own trail in the dust, right? I'd just walked through it. The porch boards creaked under my weight, loud in the silence. The general store's door swung open with a dry gasp. Inside, the light was dim and brown. Shelves lined the walls, most of them still stocked with yellowed cans and glass jars filled with things that no longer resembled food. The floor was warped. An old radio sat on the counter, its dial turned to static. I leaned in closer, not out of curiosity, but because it was the first real sound I'd heard in what felt like hours. Then it changed. Not a station. Not music. Not even voices. Just a single tone. Deep. Almost subsonic. Like something huge breathing under the earth. I backed out. Fast. Outside, the light had shifted. Clouds now smeared the sky in long gray streaks. I looked at my watch. 3:36 p.m. Had I really only been here 20 minutes? I turned back toward the car. But the car looked different. Dirtier. The windshield was streaked with what looked like tree sap, but it was dark red, almost black in places. I reached for the handle and stopped. There were handprints on the glass. Small. Smudged from the inside. That's when I started to feel it. The real fear. The primal kind. The kind that doesn't scream. It just takes your legs from under you. I turned toward the forest edge. Every tree now looked closer than before. Their branches didn't sway, but their positions had changed, subtly, impossibly, like a crowd leaning in. And then I heard it. A sound I still can't describe fully. Somewhere between a whisper and a sob. It came from the church. I couldn't see anyone. The windows were opaque, stained with something too dark to be weathering. But the door was open. Just a crack. I took a step toward it. That whisper sob came again. Closer this time. Deeper. As if it had risen up from the church's foundation rather than been spoken by anything human. I stood there in the gravel, heart pounding so loudly in my ears I nearly missed it the third time. A hushed repetition. Like something broken was trying to remember how to speak. The church door hung open just a few inches, but I could already smell the inside. It wasn't decay. Not exactly. More like mildew crossed with copper. It reminded me of wet pennies and damp wood. Like stepping into a forgotten basement after a flood. I should have walked away, but I didn't. The porch groaned under my weight. Every step felt like an intrusion. I pushed the door with the back of my knuckle. It gave with a slow, sticky resistance, swinging open wider to reveal a narrow interior cloaked in dust and shadow. The pews were still intact, though several had collapsed inward, like bones crushed from the center. Stained glass windows lined the sides, but the images were vague. No saints, no crosses, just odd looping patterns that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. Symbols, maybe. Or attempts at them. I stepped inside. The air was warmer, not like heat from a furnace, more like breath, wet and intimate, as if the walls were exhaling softly. My eyes drifted to the altar. At first, I thought it was a shroud, a gray cloth draped over a figure kneeling in prayer. But the longer I stared, the more wrong it looked. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. But it pulsed. Ever so slightly. I took a step closer. The floorboards underfoot were damp and soft, sagging like sponge cake. My fingers trembled as I reached for the shape. Then, a creak behind me. I turned fast. Nothing. Just the door. Still open, just as I'd left it. But the light had changed. Outside, the clouds had deepened into near night. The trees beyond the clearing looked taller now. Impossibly tall. As if the whole forest had restructured itself while I wasn't looking. I could feel the weight of it pressing in, branches reaching like arms. I turned back toward the altar and froze. The figure was gone, not moved, not shifted. Gone. The cloth lay flat on the altar, undisturbed, as if it had never covered anything at all. Then the whisper came again, this time from behind the altar. Closer, more distinct. A word, maybe. Or something pretending to be one. Stay. I ran. Not elegantly, not calmly. I slammed through the doors, leapt down the porch steps, and sprinted toward my car. My boots slipped on gravel. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I fumbled the keys, got the door open, threw myself into the driver's seat. The engine coughed, stuttered, then roared to life. The radio came on by itself. Full volume. Static. Then a voice. But it wasn't broadcasting. It was speaking directly to me. You've seen it now. You've fed it. The windshield fogged instantly from the inside. Letters appeared in the condensation, scrawled by an unseen finger. Dalehurst welcomes you home. I threw the car into reverse. The road had narrowed behind me. More trees, more fog, more darkness. I drove anyway. Tires scraping the edge of the shoulder, branches slapping the sides like angry arms. The further I got from the town, the more resistance I felt in the wheel, as if the road itself didn't want me leaving. But I didn't stop. I drove blind. Through the gray. Through the dark. Praying for signal. For light. For something normal. And finally, it broke. Sunlight. Real sunlight. The forest ended as abruptly as it began. The gate was gone. No arch. No road sign. Just the main highway up ahead. My GPS flickering back to life as if it had just woken from a coma. 3:19 p.m. I blinked. That couldn't be right. I'd been there. At least 40 minutes. Maybe longer. My hands were shaking so hard I had to pull over just to breathe. In the side mirror, nothing followed. No cars. No figures. Just the empty road behind me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had brought something back. Something small. Something waiting. I didn't go straight to the hotel. Couldn't. The idea of checking into some half-lit roadside lodge, lying alone in bed with the sound of that voice still echoing in my ears. You've seen it now. You've fed it. Made my skin crawl. I needed somewhere bright, somewhere loud, somewhere with people. I pulled into a gas station on the outskirts of Sedona and parked under the fluorescents. My hand still trembled as I filled the tank. The clerk inside gave me a weird look. I must have looked wrecked. Pale, eyes wide, probably smudged with dirt or worse. But he didn't say anything. Just scanned my snacks with robotic efficiency while the overhead lights buzzed like trapped hornets. When I finally made it to the hotel, I left the car running for several seconds longer than necessary, as if cutting the engine would cut something deeper. But nothing moved behind me. No mist. No voices. I slept with the lights on that night. All of them. Even so, I woke every hour to the sound of something faint and wet moving across the carpet. Each time I snapped on the bedside lamp, the noise stopped. Nothing there but the drag marks. 3 parallel lines, like fingers. By the time I got home to Phoenix the next afternoon, I'd convinced myself it had just been exhaustion. Maybe mild heat stroke. I was dehydrated, over-caffeinated, stressed out of my mind. It wasn't real. Couldn't have been. I kept repeating that as I unpacked. Repeating it as I showered. Repeating it even as I opened my sock drawer and found the pine needles. Dry. Fresh. Smelling exactly like the woods. I hadn't brought any of my hiking gear. I hadn't left the car. That night, I dreamt of the town. But in the dream, it was growing. Houses I hadn't seen. More lights in the windows. The church bell rang once. Long and low. And the general store door was open. The days that followed were strange in ways that didn't announce themselves. My phone would buzz in my pocket, but when I looked, there was no call. No text. Just the home screen, dimly glowing. I started hearing the name Dalehurst in unexpected places. Snippets of conversation. Shuffled playlists. Even once on a podcast where the host stuttered through a sentence and said it in place of something else, like a slip of the tongue. One morning, I came out to my car and found condensation on the inside of the windshield, the same 3 letters traced in the fog. G, H, W. I wiped them away. They came back the next morning. And the next. I took time off work, told them I needed to deal with family stuff, which technically wasn't a lie. I just didn't tell them the family wasn't mine. The dreams kept intensifying. Now there were faces, not clearly human, more like masks carved from old bark, twisted in ways that suggested screaming but emitted no sound. I'd wake to find my hands clenched so tight they'd gone numb, nails biting crescent moons into my palms. I stopped sleeping. I stopped going outside. My world contracted to the size of my apartment, and even that felt too open. Then came the letter. It was a Tuesday. Late. I hadn't checked the mailbox in a few days. When I finally did, I found it sitting alone. A cream-colored envelope, slightly damp, no return address. Inside was a single photo, a picture of the general store. Except this time, there was someone in the doorway. A man. No. Me, standing just inside the threshold, head turned to the side like I was listening to something. My eyes were wrong, though. Too dark. Too wide. On the back of the photo, in handwriting that looked pressed rather than written, "You are the road now." That was when I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. Something had followed me. Something wants me back. The picture stayed on my kitchen table for 3 days before I touched it again. I didn't eat, barely drank, just sat in my apartment as the light shifted across the walls and the air grew heavy, thick with that same smell. Sweet, decaying wood and something faintly metallic. I began to hear it again. Not in my dreams this time. In the vents, in the floorboards. A slow exhale, inhale, exhale, like the walls were breathing around me. I taped over the vents, stuffed towels beneath the doors, left the TV on loud to drown out the whispers. But they weren't in the air anymore. They were in my head, always whispering the same word now, over and over. Home. On the 4th day, I packed a bag, just a change of clothes. My flashlight, my phone, fully charged, even though I knew it wouldn't matter. And I drove, not toward any real place, just back through the high desert, toward that stretch of highway where the sign had been. I didn't know what I expected, that it would reappear, that I'd spot the same turnoff. But when I passed the curve just beyond mile marker 87, I knew I was close. The air shifted again. My ears popped slightly, like I was crossing into some invisible boundary. And then I saw it, the sign. Dalehurst, 3 miles. No rust, no wear, like it had just been hammered into the ground. I didn't stop this time. I didn't hesitate. I turned. The road welcomed me back. No resistance from the wheel now. No jolt at the cattle guard, just smooth, inevitable motion. As if the car remembered the way better than I did. I passed beneath the wooden gate. Rebuilt now, whole. Its beams looked newer, darker, almost wet, and the town was waiting. Every building lit. Porch lamps glowing with faint golden light. The church door stood open. The The general store's windows gleamed, and the people were there. Figures moved between the buildings, tall and thin, their limbs slightly too long, their movements fluid like submerged dancers. They didn't speak. They just turned as I approached, heads tilting in perfect unison. Their faces were bark, but their eyes were human. One of them stepped forward, a woman, I think. Though her features were stretched like wax in heat, she raised a hand, long fingers curling inward, and pointed toward the church. I got out of the car. My legs didn't shake. My breath didn't hitch. I felt lighter, detached, like I was watching myself in a dream. I walked through the gravel streets. The air buzzed around me, not with insects, but with static. Low, constant. The church doors yawned open, darker than before. The altar was waiting. So was the cloth. It no longer lay flat. It pulsed again, slower now, but undeniably alive. I stepped forward and knelt. A voice spoke from nowhere. From everywhere. You left, but you carried it with you. I closed my eyes. I didn't know. You do now. There was a weight in my chest, a cracking deep beneath the bone. Not pain, pressure. Like something unfolding inside me. Stretching. I looked down at my hands. They were no longer trembling. They were bark. I didn't scream. There was no need. Dalehurst does not let you leave untouched. And sometimes it does not let you leave at all. If you're ever driving south of Flagstaff, watch the road. The old one, not the new expressway. If you see a sign for a town that isn't on your map, don't stop. Don't turn. And if you do, don't breathe too deeply. The forest might breathe back.